on your radio, on your digital TV. This is Mornings with Rory McLaren
on 891 ABC Radio Adelaide.
As we do at this time most Mondays, it's our crime time conversation. And joining me today is Dr Terry Goldsworthy. He is the Associate Professor in Criminology at Bond University. Good morning to you, Terry.
Yeah, good morning, Rory.
Terry, I wanted to get you on to talk about the concept of no body, no parole. For our listeners and for people who are tuning in, can you just, in absolute layperson's terms, explain to us the concept of no body, no parole? Because it sounds pretty basic, but explain it to us.
Yeah, so what the laws essentially involve is that when someone is convicted of a homicide offence, they will click into effect when the offender seeks parole. And if there is no body located during the investigation, etc., for the offender to access parole, they must provide cooperation to law enforcement to locate the body. So essentially, in very basic terms, if you're convicted of a murder and there's no body located, you won't get parole until the body is located or you're seen to have satisfactorily cooperated with the authorities in an attempt to locate the body.
So just on that, in South Australia, special provisions apply to life sentence prisoners whereby the parole board must not release a life sentence prisoner on parole unless the board is satisfied that the prisoner has satisfactorily cooperated in the investigation of the offence. So that is the South Australian interpretation of these laws. What else? How is it handled in other jurisdictions?
Yeah, you're right. It comes under your Act in South Australia under the Correctional Services Act, and they look at things such as the nature of the cooperation, the extent, how timely it was, was the person truthful, and did the evidence lead to a location of the body. Queensland has had these kind of laws since about 2015, and we actually publish our decisions in terms of the parole board up here in these cases. We've had about 13. So the Queensland cases essentially decided on the same type of thing, looking at the cooperation by the person, whether they're truthful, etc. Unfortunately, there's been a study done in 2022, and it showed that these laws actually haven't resulted in a body being located in a number of homicides where there's been no remains found. So there are some questions around, are these laws actually achieving what they're put in place to do? And you can cooperate with the authorities and still have no body found, and the parole board can go, okay, we think that you've cooperated sufficiently, so we're now going to entitle you to parole. So, they're put in place for closure for victims, etc. Whether that's being achieved is open to debate, I think.
That's what I was going to ask you, Terry Goldsworthy, that, how does the recovery, benefit victims' families?
Well, look, I mean, people, when a loved one dies, always want to be able to put those remains to rest and have somewhere to go where they can reflect on the loss of their loved ones. Where you don't have any remains found, there's a number of questions that remain open, and they are, how was the victim killed? Does it match the version given by the offender? What kind of conditions were they disposed in, and all those type of things. So, in my time in the police, I probably was involved in about 25 homicides in one way or another. And only 3 of them were cases where there was no body located. So they are quite low in terms of numbers, and they're more difficult investigations, but not impossible. And in all 3 of those occasions, we convicted offenders. But certainly for the victims, seeking to get that closure is important. And one of the issues raised is, have these laws realistically promised more than they're ever going to achieve, and given false hope to victims?
A message that's come through on 0467 891. Maybe the sentence countdown should not even start until the body is located. Thank you to Rob of Highbury for that text. What do you make of that idea, Terry Goldsworthy?
Well, I think that's problematic. If you look at the Queensland experience, a number of those cases, the bodies weren't located, yet the offenders had cooperated with authorities. And, there could be any number of circumstances where bodies aren't locatable, but the person has cooperated. So, what happens in those cases is the person just remain in jail for any length of time, doesn't get out. The other issue, I guess, is, if you look at, probation parole, it really is a rehabilitative tool that we have in our justice system. And one of the arguments against these laws is it's now being turned into a punitive type of tool where you punish someone a second time, perhaps, rather than just letting the sentence go through as normal. So I think we just need to be careful. I can understand the premise behind the laws. And, as a former police officer, detective, I think it is important that people find, the remains of their loved ones, having been involved in a number of cases. But on the flip side, you have issues such as, are we forcing, people to self-incriminate? Are we, engaging in arbitrary, detainment of them by not giving them the option of parole? And are we punishing them a second time when they've been sentenced the first time, but then we add this kind of secondary punishment on? So there is I think there's room for discussion around them and whether they're effective. Are they achieving what we put them in place for?
Here's another perspective from Grant. Our legal system is imperfect. Innocent people still get convicted on occasion. If an innocent is convicted of murder and has no knowledge of the whereabouts of the victim's body, they will suffer a greater penalty, no parole, than a murderer who discloses the whereabouts of the body.
Well, that's quite correct. I mean, I teach in the area of miscarriages of justice, and many of them are murders by default, the cases that we look at. So, yes, if you have someone who is claiming they're factually innocent, well, they're never going to be able to satisfy these grounds for parole, and that's problematic. So, I think if you look at it, it is difficult. Someone trying to maintain their innocence and say that they're not factually guilty of the offence committed, where does this leave them? Because they will be exposed to the laws. I mean, you can't produce a body if you didn't actually kill the person. You're never going to be able to produce the body or the location of it.
Now, can I ask you, how does circumstantial evidence like witness statements or digital footprints help establish a strong case when a victim's body is not found?
Yeah, look, I mean, any homicide investigation is a search for information. So police begin in a low information state and they try to get to a high information state. And where you don't have the remains of the victim, you're obviously missing out on a very large chunk of forensic evidence that you gain from the body and where the body's located. But it doesn't make it impossible. I mean, we all live digital footprints now whenever we go online, and very few of us are not in the online space in terms of how we conduct our lives these days. So technology has provided excellent evidence in terms of being able to track what people do and build a picture of what's occurred at the time of the homicide, etc. Witnesses are also important. If you're talking about homicides where there's no remains found and the person is missing and it's a circumstantial case, we look for what we call proof of life. And that is, shown by access to medical records, financial accounts, associates, friends, their normal daily routine. And police will get statements of those people and those institutions to show that normal daily routine has stopped at a certain point in time and has never recommenced. And that is what we call evidence of lack of proof of life. And that is sufficient for circumstantial cases to show that someone is dead.
Dr Terry Goldsworthy, Associate Professor in Criminology at Bond University. Thank you so much for joining me this morning.
Thanks, Rory.
It's 2 minutes to 10 here on 891 ABC Radio Adelaide Mornings. Keep your messages coming through 0467 922 891 or call 1300 222 891. Now, we have had a statement which has come through from the Minister